Okay, recording has started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the final online Streamwise training for this 2024 season. This will cover the desktop assessment process, and Dana will be taking the lead. This meeting will be recorded for those who aren't able to be in attendance today. And we are running this meeting as a webinar, so feel free to stay off camera and muted, enjoy some lunch, or also you can come on camera and off mute if you would like. So I will leave it there. Go ahead, Dana.
All right, thank you, Lauren. So yeah, Streamwise Desktop Assessment Training 2024. Brief presentation, then we're going to go through the Streamwise Desktop Atlas basics, some Survey 123 app basics. So Survey 123 is a change from years past, so that's a bit different. And then we'll do some example properties which are different from the ones on the tutorial website. And then I'll show you some like reporting stuff that we won't necessarily be using right away, but good to know. So first off, why do desktop assessment? What information do we assess? What's the process? And it varies slightly from New York to Quebec to Vermont. We're going to be using the Atlas, like I said, the Survey 123 field data collection app. Again, that's fillable. That's new this year. And then we're going to be talking briefly about the paper and fillable PDF forms, but we're not really going to be using those a ton today. We'll go over a little bit of database and tracking and reporting and sharing stuff. So briefly, why do we do this desktop assessment? What do we need to know? So like, what are the current conditions? How much buffer already exists and in what conditions? So that's really your first thing that you do with desktop assessment. How big is the property? Because again, we have different tracks and Streamwise for properties over and under 1 acre. So we determine that. We're determining whether or not there are structures within 50 feet or 15 meters of the stream or river as best we can tell from imagery. We also, can we determine how much of the buffer is already developed? So not just structures, but things like lawn, garden, patio, things of that nature. What are the soils like? Are they sandy and good for infiltration, or are they clayey and won't really let a lot of water in? That may help us determine what kind of upland runoff management features we might be able to install. And then finally, does it flood? Is it a wetland, or the water's polluted or impaired in some way? These aren't necessarily criteria that are critical for Streamwise awards, but it just can inform you when you're on the property, looking at the property in context, making decisions, things like that. So important tips on desktop assessment. My first important one, I think the primary one, is don't sweat the details. If you can't determine the precise buffer width, it's all right. Normally you can get a sense of, is it over or under 50 or 30 feet? And then once you're in the field, you can kind of look at it in more detail and determine what it actually is. If you can't determine the exact development percentage, whether it's impervious or pervious development like lawns and gardens, that's okay. Just get close. And again, like I mentioned, soils, floodplain, wetlands, etc. They're good to know, but they're not Streamwise critical. So what information do we assess? Well, we get basin for tracking. We get the stream and river name for tracking. Like I said, the buffer width, the canopy cover percent, parcel size, structures, buffer development, hydrologic soil group, and floodplains, wetlands, polluted or impaired waters. And that's all taken from this form here. That's actually, I think that's the fillable PDF form, or a screenshot of the Fulcrum map. But that's basically what we're like trying to assess. And so where does this fall in the overall process? Remember, like, we're trying to get the word out and do a lot of outreach. But then the second part of this is, once we've got our property, we do the desktop assessment to then inform the field visit and the property assessment when you're out there. So basically, we start by pulling up the Atlas, and we pull up the app, and we'll go through this. We go through the app section, desktop assessment, and then you go out into the field. You can give the award and a report or follow-up and do the tracking and reporting. And so we've got a little screenshot here of the desktop Atlas, and then we've got a couple of screenshots of this new Survey 123 app, which we'll want to have you guys download before the field assessment training. But we're going to go through it today and just look at what it looks like. It's pretty straightforward. We tried to keep it very clean, much like the Fulcrum map, if any of you used that last year. Um, Someone's making a lot of background noise and it's super distracting. So if you could mute yourself, that'd be great. Thank you. Yeah, so this app is very similar to last year. There's a lot of drop downs, there's a lot of radio buttons. But overall, it's fairly clean. There are a bunch of different sections. So you'll notice we have this desktop assessment section followed by background information. And so we're just trying to keep things like well organized for you. Um, and essentially, this is just taking that desktop form and porting it directly into this survey. So you do have some options when you're out in the field. Some people do feel more comfortable working on like a paper form while in the field or on the desktop and then using the app later. That's an option. We do have those forms, so you can do that. But ultimately, you'll need to enter the information into the app, especially for things like photos. There's really no way to do that with the paper form. So we're going to walk through the process for each region today. Please ask questions as we go along. We'll try to get through them. But if something doesn't make sense to you, please do, let me know. And then there's follow-up. We have tutorial videos that we've pre-recorded. So it would be really great if you have further questions after today, watch those. I do recommend that you use the timestamps on those. They have subtitles now. The French subtitles are auto-generated. They're pretty decent. They're not great. Neither are the English, to be honest. But they're not too bad. And I often watch those tutorial videos at like 1.5 speed. That's my next little thing. Watch the Vermont one first. It's got the basics plus a Vermont example, and then watch in whatever order you want after that. And again, you can probably speed that up. And so we do have links here to the desktop atlas. That's public. There's no login needed. This year, as a change from Fulcrum last year, the Survey 123 app is public, so there's no login needed there. And then all of those YouTube tutorial videos are up on the website now. And we'll actually look at those in a minute here. I'm going to just share.
Hey, Dana, did you see the message in the chat?
I did it.
Could you slow down a little bit? Thanks.
Yeah, no worries. Okay. So let's see. We're going to share the screen. Stop sharing on that one. We'll share the next one. Entire screen. This one. Okay. All right. Is everyone able to see the screen? Lauren, you got that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And just this will be recorded, so you can go back at your own pace and watch the recordings as well.
Yeah. We're going to be kind of going over a lot of the same stuff I just explained in the presentation in the examples as well. So first off, streamwisechamplain.org, that's your main portal. If we go to assessors, this is where a lot of your resources live. And so many of you remember that from last year. So again, assessment protocol lives here. Importantly for us today, the atlas can be accessed through this site. And then note also here, we've got access to the Survey 123 app. So this actually launches the Survey 123. Let's see, we'll just click that. That's the actual survey. But before you do that, you're going to want to actually get the app on the iTunes App Store or via Google Play. There's also a Windows version of it too if you have a Windows device. So it works on all the major platforms. So you can get that, and then you can get the app here via this QR code or clicking this guy right here. And there are some instructions that we've put together. So if you are messing around with the app on your own, we do have instructions there. And the last thing that I wanted to point out before we go to the atlas, we'll sneak down here. All of our tutorials are on the website. This desktop assessment webinar is from last year, so don't watch that one. You learn how to use the atlas, but the app interface is totally different. But all of these tutorials have been updated this year. So if you want to watch those, that's where they live. They're just on YouTube. So we are going to go to launch the atlas first. And this is what pops up every time. And then you can see over here too, I have my phone just connected to my laptop so you can see the screen. But because there's no back-end login for Survey 123, Many of you might remember last year we had the atlas open in one tab and the survey or the Fulcrum app open in another tab. That's not going to work the same way this year. So really what I'm counseling people to do is have the atlas open in a browser window like this. And then the app can be just open on your phone or your iPad or something like that. And so that's kind of what I'm showing here. So this is kind of the conceptual layout that you might have. First off, desktop assessment atlas basics. We're just going to go over some of the basics here. This always pops up. This has some basic instruction on how to use the app. It also links to the New York parcel information, so this will be useful later. It also links to the Quebec parcel viewer, so that's actually useful later. But we can minimize this if we just want to have our screen maximized. And again, just open and close. Pretty easy. Zoom tools are up here, or you can scroll zoom like I'm doing now. Imagery changes, certain layers will pop up, or if you get lost and you get scared and you want to go home, just hit home. So that's that. We do have an address search here. So we'll use that later to find an address or a place. We can always just close that. Below that, we have our layer and our legend box. And this is important. We've organized all the data into regions, so Quebec, Vermont, New York. And then we also have some data that's regional or national. We'll get into this as we do the mock assessment. But you can open up any of these by clicking the little arrow. See there's a little eyeball here that actually turns data on and off. So right now, all we can see really is the basins. Turn those off by themselves. We can turn on all kinds of data like that. Pretty easy. Notice how USA flood hazard areas, that's grayed out. That's because we're zoomed out too far to see that. If we were to zoom in some of these areas, now we're starting to get flood hazard data. So just keep that in mind. If you don't see something right away, check a little eyeball or just make sure you're not zoomed out too far to see it. So now we can't see that. Let's go home. And then that's the regional national data. Again, we have different layers for all of these different areas. The legend will tell you what's currently visible. So if you're curious about what you're seeing, so if we zoom in again, notice that we have basins on and we also have this flood hazard areas on, so we can see what those flood hazards are. So again, here's our layers, turn them on and off. Here's our legend, see what they are. We actually have the same thing down here. So you can interface with it down here if you want. Close that up if you want to. And the legend, same deal, just another option for you to be able to see that. We can also change the base maps. I leave it on imagery for the most part. I find that to be the most useful for me. I don't believe there's another imagery source in here, although it could be wrong. There might be a couple different ones. But 9 times out of 10, I just leave it on the stock imagery. But just notice that you can change that. I guess there's NAIP imagery as well. Could be different, could be the same. Can be useful for certain parcels if you want to see if there's imagery that shows you different buffer conditions. But for the most part, I just leave it on this one because again, desktop assessment doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to inform your field assessment visit. The last couple things, measure tool. We can measure lines, we can measure polygons. And all you have to do is just click and start measuring. It does default to metric, but notice we can shift it to whatever we want. We pretty much do stuff in Streamwise in feet or acres. Sorry, Quebec. Same thing with polygons. Click a polygon, double click to finish it. If you want to see it in acres, switch it over to acres. If you want to make a new measurement, just click new measurement and Bob's your uncle. So that's that right there. That's really a valuable tool for when we're measuring buffer width and determining can it be acreage or buffer acreage, things like that. And then finally, one thing I really think is cool is that we built a map printout button this year. It's a fairly simple template, but essentially it gives you the option to print either a landscape or a portrait map. And it's pretty straightforward. You want to see what you're going to print, hit print extents. Everything that gets blued out like that is printed. So zoom into where you want to be. Turn on whatever layers you might want to see. So you might not want all the layers on, but you might want to see soils information and parcels. So you can turn those on, click print. It's frustratingly slow to generate a picture, but eventually it does. And I'm going to show you that right now. And I'll literally just keep talking while this thing beach balls. Keep going. This is doing GIS right here, staring at a screen until something happens. People always wonder why it takes so long to make maps. This is why. I promise it does work. I've tested it a million times. All right, great. So we got that. So when I click that, it's not the prettiest map in the world. I will absolutely admit that, but it does give you the layers you want to see. It gives you north bar and a scale, and then it shows you whatever layers are available. And so then to get this, available for uploading to your record later on, you can right click and do a save image, save that wherever you want, and send it to your phone or other device via however you get stuff from your computer to your phone or device, and you're good to go. So yeah, that's kind of exciting. I think it's neat that we created that so you don't have to screen grab anymore. You get a legend, definitely more dialed. And then if you want to make another one, just hit reset. And again, remember landscape or portrait. Let's see, I'm going to zoom back out to the main basin. And now we're going to start looking at survey 123 real quick and just see what we're dealing with there. So once you've downloaded it, this is what it looks like, the green survey 123. You'll open that. I've already added the Streamwise field assessment app to my survey 123, but once you get the overall survey 123 app, you're going to have to go to the specific Streamwise field assessment record creating app and get that. I've already done that. Notice at the top here, it says updates available. That's actually great because I made some changes to the app yesterday. And so essentially I can quickly go hit these little spinny icons and I get the updates. And that'll pop up every time there are updates available. So unlike Fulcrum where you had to often sync the app or remember to sync the app, this prompts you at the top. You could elect not to do it, but I would counsel you to update the app if there are app updates. And then beyond that,
I just want to pause to answer Emily's question that came in through the chat because it's relevant to this part of the presentation. So
yeah, thank you. I'm not monitoring the chat, just I can't see it.
Yeah, no worries. So right now we do not have sign-in accounts for you all. This Streamwise field assessment survey is public facing. So when we give you the directions on how to download the Streamwise app onto your phones or your tablets for survey 123, right now you will click do not sign in and you'll still be able to access the Streamwise field assessment app. I'm working with NewiPick to get a purchase order in for a new Streamwise account for you all. And when that is ready, you will have login access to see the back end of the data. I'm not sure exactly how long that will take, maybe a couple-ish weeks. So we'll just update you as soon as we can. But right now, you will not be logging into Survey 123, and this assessment is public facing, so anyone could log in and fill out a Streamwise assessment.
Yeah, correct. Thank you. maybe don't tell everyone to do it. Yeah, actually, when you click that link on the Streamwise site that says launch Survey 123 app, you actually get this. If you do it on your phone, you can open the Survey 123 field app, and that'll open on your device. So again, that was back here. Let's see, am I below? No, I'm above it. Yeah, so that button right there, or the QR code. So you could scan it with your phone from the, we're trying to make this bigger actually, but you can scan it with your phone or just click here. And again, that just goes here, open Survey 123 field app. And then also it'll prompt you here if you don't have the field app, the overall app, you can download it there. So, and again, public, no need to log in. Thanks for
Okay.
that question. That was good.
Yeah, and just to follow up, so I have the app open and I say log in or continue without signing in.
Correct.
And when I click on that to try to get the Streamwise field assessment on the app on my phone, it says that I can't do it. I have to sign in first.
Okay. I'm not sure. You may have to create some sort of user account for the overall Survey 123 app.
You shouldn't have to. I
Okay.
will troubleshoot Emily on the back end and we'll follow up at the end of Dana's presentation if possible, or I'll send an email to everybody.
Yeah,
Perfect. Thank
I think
you.
that'd be good. Okay. So let's see, where were we? Oh, we're playing with the app now, aren't we? So anyway, once you've gotten, the program download and the specific Streamwise app download, you can click that. And it just pops up this screen. And notice I currently have a collect and a drafts. And this is going to be a fairly common screen for you to have. Collect will allow you to collect a new record, whereas drafts can be that's basically the folder for all of your drafts. So say the use case is you've done a desktop assessment in the office, you filled out that form, you've saved it as a draft, and we'll go over that in a little bit. That's where you'll be able to access those records if you need to go back and edit the desktop assessment data for some reason, or when you're out in the field and you want to be able to update that desktop assessment with field data. So, to quickly show you what that looks like, click drafts. We've got one record in here. Currently, I have a list view down at the bottom. And then over here, I also have a map view. And if I click map view, that shows me, the one record I have. I can zoom out, I can zoom in. I find the map view to be the easier way to interface with this data because you'll notice that this name makes absolutely no sense. And this is for a couple of reasons. One, we just started building the app, so we haven't fine-tuned everything just yet. And two, in order to actually fine-tune the name, we have to change how we interface with the app creation. And we're not quite there yet, because again, we just started doing this. So for right now, I would counsel you to interface with your drafts via the map interface. And so it'll show you, once we've created them where they are spatially, you'll be able to zoom in on those and find them. So that's that. I think you can also change search mode. We don't really need to mess with that. All right, so we're going to go back out to the main screen. And what we're primarily concerned with today is the collection of data. So we hit collect. It loads the survey. Notice we still have the Streamwise Atlas and all the parcel links in here. So if you wanted to interface with those on your phone, you could. I don't know if it's that useful, but they are still there. And notice we can kind of scroll down through. And so we've got a lot of the same screens, that we've seen in the past, but property location is the first big one. And so I think at this point, I'm going to just start going through a mock assessment. Let me find my address that I want to go to. Oh, right, Indy Carl's house. So this first assessment is actually one that we're going to do at our field assessment training in Waterbury. So this will be kind of interesting for you guys to see this. You'll get a little bit of a sneak preview. So first off, I go to the search bar in my Atlas, and I'm going to type in the address that I want. South Main Street, Waterbury, Vermont. It'll pop up suggestions. They're really useful. Now that I'm at my location, I'm actually going to turn off some of these layers because I don't need to see this right yet. So I'm going to turn off some of that stuff. Since I'm working in Vermont, I actually do want to see some information for Vermont. So I'm going to turn on this overall eye, and now I get this horrible mishmash. All I really want to see at this point are parcel lines. I don't want to see anything else. So I'm just going to go through and turn off all of those layers. And it turns out that this right here is the parcel that we're interested in. This is 157 South Main Street. So I found that on the Atlas. And now all I do over here in the app is I click the map. It opens up the map interface. and you can search a location. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to type in 157 South Main Street, Waterbury, Vermont. And notice it does pop up a little suggestion. You can click that, zoom in, just make sure that you are where you thought you were supposed to be. And you are, it's right on that. And so at the bottom here, there's a green or there's a white check mark in the green area. We just click that green check mark and that saves the location. Notice you can zoom in and zoom out. You can go back to the home. And then this button right here actually uses your precise location. So now you all know where I live at the corner of Stowe Street and Swayze Court. That might be useful if you're out in the field and starting a desktop assessment. But for right now, we're going to use the search function. We're going to go back to 157 South Main, and we're going to click the check mark at the bottom. And now our location is set. If you messed up for some reason, you can always just click the map and go back. So now we're ready to start actually answering some questions here. And so the first one, notice we have statuses to be assessed or given, a report given. Right now, we're going to go to be assessed because that's what we're doing. I happen to know that the basin I'm in Waterbury is the Winooski. If I didn't know what basin I was working in for some reason, you can actually click on the atlas. Let's see, actually the parcels. We do have basins on here. Let me just turn off flood hazard layers. And so if you click anywhere in the parcel with the basins layer on, it'll pop up an information bubble that says basin name Winooski Basin. So that's one way of accessing basin data. I'm sure most of you know which basins you're working in most of the time, but anyway, we wanted to give you that option. Stream or river name, this is the Winooski. So I'm just gonna write in Winooski. And now we're actually starting to get ready to actually enter information. So we're gonna start to do some measurement. So average buffer width. The way I like to get at this is basically to zoom down to the parcel I'm interested in. I start looking at the imagery. Remember, we're going from ordinary high water mark. Can be difficult to determine from satellite imagery, but keep in mind that all we're really trying to do is get a general sense of what we're seeing. Notice too, I don't know, this is kind of annoying to me, but the parcels line here doesn't line up with the fence. You'll find that parcel lines don't always line up with what you see on imagery. Don't sweat it. Just do your best to try and figure out what you're measuring. And so I'll basically take a measurement in the middle. I think, I don't know, that kind of looks like canopy. That looks like natural buffer, maybe to like right here. Notice it gives me that in meters. I want it in feet, so I just change it to feet. I got 26.5 feet. All right, that's cool. So we got one measurement. Over here, I don't know, it looks like we might actually have a wider buffer. We'll kind of be a little conservative and say we'll measure to the middle of that tree. It's looking like 40 feet right to there. So we've got a 26-foot measurement, we've got a 40-foot measurement. I'll do one more over on this side, again, from the edge of the water. 30 feet. So let's see, 40, 30, 70, 75 divided by 3. We're looking at about a 25-foot average. And that's how I typically do it. I'll take a few different measurements depending on the parcel size, and I'll try to get an approximate average. This parcel is pretty easy because it's not that big. Larger parcels are going to be more challenging. Again, I think your job as a desktop assessor is to get the best sense that you can of what the buffer looks like, and don't worry necessarily about being super precise on buffer width in all cases. So try to get a general average. So I enter in 25, just typing in 25. Look at the canopy cover percent. So actually, I'm just gonna move this down. And the one thing I do want to do is I'm kind of curious, like within a 50-foot, let's see, it's about there, I think. 53, that's close. I want to know the canopy cover percentage in that 50-foot swath next to the river. So I often just make a little datum line like this, so I know what's approximately 50 feet. And then I'll look at the imagery and I'll go, okay, what's actually canopy cover? So I've got a little bit of canopy cover over here. This could kind of be considered canopy. Through here, you can see some trees right here, right here. But overall, I'm going to estimate that the canopy cover is probably somewhere around 35% from what I can see there. Again, you can refine that in the field if you want, but this just gives you an idea. All right, so now I need to determine the parcel size. This is a big difference between New York, Quebec, and Vermont. In Vermont, we have a parcels layer. It's pretty basic. So all I do is I click as long as the parcels are on. And remember, those parcels are found in the Vermont data, inactive and active parcels. Just make sure both of those are turned on. And the first thing we get is a total acreage. We also get names with Vermont data. So this is 0.33 acres. So is it less than 1 acre? It's definitely less than an acre. So if you needed to on this parcel, you could consider a 30-foot buffer according to Streamline's criteria. So that is an option. So keep that in mind when assessing this. Then, are there structures within 50 feet? Let's find out. So I'm going to go to the nearest structure. I think that's actually his shed right there. So that's probably the nearest structure. You could kind of be conservative and go from the edge of the garage if you wanted to. But I'm just going to measure down 17.88 meters or 58.6 feet. So I'm going to say no, there aren't structures within 50 feet and leave it at that. All right, so now we're looking at total buffer area in acres. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Remember, I want to just know what that buffer is within 50 feet. So again, I just draw a line and go, okay, great. 50 feet, that's about the end of the picnic table right there. So now I know roughly what I'm looking at. And then I kind of draw a line from parcel line to parcel line. I might have been a little aggressive with that line. It might be beyond 50 feet, but that's okay. One of the things you'll notice is this measurement tool sometimes hangs. All you have to do is just press down on one of your buttons and move the map. I find it to be absolutely infuriating when it does that, but that's what it does. So sometimes that can be something where you have to actually zoom out from where you were to get the imagery away from the edge of the screen so you can complete the measurement. I don't know why it does that. I haven't been able to fix it. Switch that to acres. And so we're looking at basically 0.13 acres within 50 feet of the stream. So I'm going to write that into this area here. Next, is there impervious cover within that buffer area? And let's see, I'm looking in this. I don't see an impervious cover in that area. We're almost capturing part of that shed, but there's no patios. There are no other structures. So I'm actually going to write in 0 right there. So there's no acres, 0 acres. This is a little bit trickier. What's the developed pervious cover within this overall buffer? So again, keep in mind our 50 feet ends right about there. I'm going to click new measurement. We'll keep doing this. I'm kind of looking at, I don't know, I'm going to say like this area right here is looking pretty developy to me. This is kind of looking like lawn. Notice I'm not being super precise here. I just want to get a general sense of how much development might there be. So I'm going to go 0.04 acres right there. And then if I click in this buffer development percentage, it automatically calculates it for me at 31%. So is development less than 10% of the buffer area? It's definitely not. So we're going to click no there. All right, for the moment, we're kind of at an end to what we're measuring, at least for a second. Now we're getting into soil groups. And again, remember, soil groups, not a Streamwise criteria, but they are good to know for management practices. If you have infiltration soils or soils that are good for that, maybe you can do some sort of stormwater management practice. You know, if you have clay soils, that's going to limit you as to what you could potentially recommend to the homeowner. But we're going to go back to our layers button. We're going to hit that and we're going to open up the Vermont data. Remember, the overall Vermont eye is on, so everything is visible. I'm going to keep the parcels on for right now. And I'm going to go down to Vermont hydrologic soil groups. I'm going to click that and things pop up. And so there's a couple ways of getting at what are these layers. One, just click the legend, match the colors. So we're looking at hydro group A and hydro group B. And so we could just click those on our app and go on our merry way. The other thing we can do is we can click anywhere on the screen and it'll pop up these little information panels. Notice it popped up the parcels first, Vermont active parcels. Then you can just scroll through like this and get into the next layer that's visible. You can also click this screen. So that was just this little layer control over here. And you can actually click this and it'll pop up the information for that. So a couple different ways of getting at that. So we click this one, notice that that's the active polygon, click down here, click through. Now notice that this is the active polygon, that's hydro group A. So again, just another way you can get at that information. So we've got that info, hydro group A and B. We'll leave the Quebec hydrologic soil group alone. They have slightly different groups. Now we're getting the floodplain data. So again, let's go back to our layer control. We'll turn off hydro soil groups. What are we doing? Floodplains? Floodplains is actually in regional and national data. So there's a published USA flood hazard areas layer. So remember that's on down there. And look, we got a couple different colors. Again, let's just go to the legend and see what we're dealing with here. 1% annual chance of flood. That's basically this right here. And then regulatory floodway down here. So we're definitely in a mapped floodplain. So we'll click yes to that. And then for floodplain type, I'm just going to click 100 year. You could click other and say that it's also in a floodway. But realistically, like this is not Streamwise award criteria critical. It's just a good to know. So as far as you know, it's just good to know that like any sort of riparian buffer in this area is very likely to get flooded, maybe subject to that. In fact, this property flooded twice last year. So I spent a lot of time in that basement. So that's a good for you to know. Same with wetlands. So let's turn on our layer controls again. Wetlands, not in the regional national data for Vermont. They're actually in the Vermont data. So let's go down and find Vermont VSWI wetlands as of 2010. Nothing pops up here. One thing I like to do just to check is I like to zoom out and make sure that the layer is actually on, at least in proximity. You can see over here, we've got a wetlands. And then over here, there's some sort of wetland. Check the, probably a class 2. But on our specific property, nothing. So again, let's just zoom back in there. And we'll click mapped wetland, no. Polluted or impaired waters. So let's look at the Vermont data. Do we have a priority stream or river? Weirdly enough, the Winooski doesn't pop up as a priority stream or river. So I'm not sure how complete the priority streams or rivers data is, but again, this is not critical for Streamwise Award. It's just a good to know. So I'm going to click no. All right. So at this point, let's turn on the wetland or the. What am I trying to turn on? Hydrologic soil groups. And I'm going to zoom into the property. And this is where you could generate that map. And so it's going to generate all of the layers that are currently on here. So parcels, hydrologic soil groups, I think wetlands are still on. And this is where we could actually use this little paperclip icon to attach a file or photo. And so you click either of those depending on, again, your workflow on your device, whether you save something as a file or a photo. And so what, the use case for that would be, again, opening up this map that you just created right here, right click save as, saving it onto your computer and then sending it to your device or however you'd like to do that. So, and then you can use this little paperclip icon over here, click the photo or the file, and then be able to attach that. So that's just kind of a little more convenient. It'll streamline some of the reporting tasks for you.
Hey,
Just gonna do
Dana,
a reset.
Bridget asked if you could demonstrate that again. And then Molly will answer your question at the end.
So you click the paperclip and then you just create you click file or photo and attach it however you want after you save the map. Does that make sense?
We got a plus mark. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm not going to go into the details of like how you might get it onto your device or whatnot from your computer or how, because everyone's is slightly different. So you'll have to figure out your own workflow on that one to some degree. Desktop assessment notes, just add in whatever notes you want. So we'll just add some notes. And then we're kind of done with the desktop assessment portion. So then we get into background information. You can absolutely enter this information in when you're in the office or wherever. So we're going to pretend today that we're working for Michelle. Where's it? Friends of the Winooski. Auto populates the date. Notice these little arrows, asterisks, stars. Those are required questions. We made a lot of questions required this year just to ensure that we're getting good data capture the first time through. So, if you haven't filled out something that is required, it won't let you send it to the database. So you're going to have to fill out all of these required fields. So yeah, we know that it's Carl. Address, I don't think it auto-populates, so you do have to like throw that in there. It will auto-populate if you're in the field. Let's see, 157 South Main Street. Mailing address if different, email, phone number, etc. You can enter property owner information here, so we know that's owned year-round. Carl's been there for 6 years or so. These are important, and this is something that you'll have to fill out in the field. Notice we have made these required: permission to use information in outreach materials and the photo release. We'll go over this a bit in the field assessment training, but it's really important to us to know, do we have information can we use their information in outreach? Photos, stories, things like that. We don't want to use people's stories or images without permission. And so these are important to check yes or no to. We had a lot of people not checking anything last year, and so it was a bit of a guess. But we're going to say yes. And then if you do say yes, notice that the photo release signature now is required, and that'll just pop up a little screen. You can sign things. And then once you're done, check mark. So we've also got some space for social media photos. What do you value in your riparian area? This is all, very similar to last year. What motivated you to participate? We do have an owner statement. You can order, or you can do an audio recording, and you can also do a video recording. So, and then interested neighbors is another important part of that. So now that we're done with the desktop assessment, somewhat counterintuitively, there's no green check mark or anything like that to say, I want to save this. We can go on to the next screens for, category, the field assessment category and buffer width, and all those questions pop up. I'm actually going to make sure that these are collapsed, so it'll be a little bit more neat when we open that up. Notice we do have these diagrams. I'm still trying to get these to work on phone screens. They look great on the preview and they don't actually work here. But if we just wanted to save this app, counterintuitively, you click the X to close the survey, and we have some options. We can save in drafts, we can close and lose changes, or we can continue. And you want to save this in drafts because that preserves your ability to go back to your draft folder and then to look up on the map if you want to. Notice little blue dot, that's me. I can zoom in and I can click that. And now I'm back to where I was. So that's an easy way to save and draft for later editing. So again, click that X, close the survey, save and drafts. And then we can go back to our main screen right there using the back arrow, and we can collect another survey. Before I go on to New York and Quebec, I know we're a little bit over time, or it's running a little long, but are there any questions that I can answer right now before we go on to New York and Quebec?
Dana, we do have a couple of things in the chat. So Molly asked, if you're having trouble identifying what's buffer versus lawn, for example, do you recommend cross-referencing the atlas with another mapping app like Google Earth?
For sure. That can definitely be helpful. I've definitely done that. Remember too, we did have, let's just zoom in and see if it actually makes a difference. We'll go over to here in New York. We do have these base maps. So this one, imagery with labels, is the one that we have by default. Notice that we do have a couple others down here. Imagery hybrid, I think it's actually the same. And then there is an NAIP imagery hybrid. So that is different imagery. It can be different times of year, different years, different resolutions. So let's just click, see, I don't know. Yeah, definitely different imagery. Possibly easier to tell buffer width from this. Definitely use Google Earth, definitely use Google Maps or Bing or whatever you like, because they can be different and that can be helpful. Also too, again, if it's not clear in the desktop, how much buffer there is. Remember, you're just trying to get a general overall sense. You'll have to confirm this in the field anyway. Imagery is not going to be able to tell you exactly what you're dealing with. So again, don't sweat the details potentially. Is there another question?
Yes, 1
Okay.
second. Okay, Bridget asks, any challenges getting these layers to show smaller tributaries, brooks, etc.?
Oh,
And Jed,
definitely.
I just put an answer to your question. So Dana, answer Bridget's question, and then we'll go back to Jed's question.
Yeah, for sure. Small tribs don't always show up. I did put the USGS National Hydrography data set on here, and that is generally pretty good. So we do have data extending into Canada, as well as for obviously the, Vermont, New York portions. But it's just kind of a crapshoot as far as like whether or not it actually captures all of the tributaries. Seems to do a good job, but I wouldn't put 100% faith in it. So again, that's going to be something that you may have to determine from imagery. You may be in the field and finding tributaries that weren't necessarily on the map. So I think that's a good question. We don't have all the data possible, but we've made the best attempt at getting like the best data we could find.
And this gets to Jed's question in the chat about doing the desktop assessment prior to the field assessment. The main purpose of doing a desktop assessment is just to understand a little bit better what you're walking into when you arrive to the property in person to talk with the landowner. It's not 100% necessary to do all of the steps of the desktop analysis and keep the data as the most accurate data from this online analysis. What you do in person in the field with the landowner is the primary data that you're going to be collecting and what you're going to be using to give your Streamwise recommendations. Does that make sense,
100%.
Jed? And then to get to the other question, Dana, I would like to ensure that the app for the name of the property owner, you have to list first and last name. Is that a possible update?
We'd have to make another question that's first name, last name.
Okay.
So.
Okay. And then before we dive into New York and Quebec, I just want to share my screen. Just reiterate to everyone, like, this is a lot of information. This is new to everyone this year because we're moving from Fulcrum to Survey 123. And it's a lot, especially if you don't do these online types of assessments. So I just want to reiterate that the assessor's web page on our Streamwise Champlain website is the hub for all of our information. And it's a place where you can go at any time to get information on Streamwise. But of course, Dana, me, Holly, Matt, and Pam are also in-person resources as well. But I just want to scroll down and make sure everybody's aware that the assessment protocol is here. A link to launch the desktop assessment atlas is here. We have the Survey 123 app and download. And what I put in the chat in response to Emily is that this QR code right now is a bit too small for phones to get on. So you're going to want to click instructions, Survey 123, and that pops up this standard operating procedure document, and the link to download the survey is right here. And so Emily said it did work for her to go about it this way. So that's great. You could all do that as well. We are updating the landowner follow-up report, so that will be coming really soon. We also have the downloads of the property assessment forms if you want to do paper in the field instead of the online Survey 123 or both. Then we have this feedback form that we'll talk about later, but it's linked here, and that's to give us input on how to improve Streamwise into the future. And then all of the online trainings that we've had so far, and then this desktop assessment will be uploaded. And then below that is the media kit. I will be giving everybody the appropriate amount of a word sign, so you don't need to formally request one. But the messaging BMPs, the style guide, the social media kit, the links to download the logos, a link to look at photos, print materials and graphics. So if you click print materials, this has the event poster, this has the rack cards, this has the stickers. So anytime, if you need extra materials that aren't gonna be provided, really right now, it's just the 2 event posters. I'll be giving out the rack cards and the stickers and the postcards as soon as I can to everybody. And then below that, we have issues and solutions. So what do you say to a landowner if a buffer isn't wide enough, etc. So if you're new to the program or want to refamiliarize yourself with all of the recommendations that would be given out during a Streamwise assessment, as well as the resource library the consultant team developed and the literature review that went into developing all of Streamwise, that's all here on the assessors page. So please look here, please familiarize yourself with this website, and it takes time to learn how to do the desktop assessment and in-person assessment. Just practice makes perfect as well. So I would encourage everyone to do a few practice properties in the desktop assessment atlas on your own before you join the in-person training, because that's when Dina can work with you really closely and answer questions. You won't know the questions you have until you start exploring. So yeah, thank you.
All right, awesome, perfect. So we're gonna try to run through a couple more examples real quick for New York and Quebec. I know we're nearing 1 o'clock already, but I'd like to show you these. So let's see, back to the atlas. Okay, so we're gonna go a little bit quicker through these in some areas, but first of all, remember we use our search bar to get to where we want to go, and where I want to go is 5453 Peru Street, Plattsburgh. So we're going to Plattsburgh. I picked this pretty much at random. So remember too, now we're collecting a new point. It's not a draft, so we hit the collect button, opens up our app. We click our map. We can click search location, pull up your little keyboard here. Peru Street, Plattsburgh. Love it when a plan comes together. There we go. Let's zoom in. So let's see, let's make sure we're at the same location. We are. So I'm going to hit the check mark button down there. Now we can start doing some of our data entry. Sorry, brain is melting. It's hot in my house. All right, turns out that I know for a fact we're in the Saranac Basin here. So I'm going to click that, hit Saranac. I'll write Saranac right there to enter that. And now we start measuring stuff. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. I'm going to turn off this flood hazard area because we don't need to see that right now. Notice we don't have parcel data for New York. All of the New York parcel data lives online in other maps, and they won't share it. And that's very frustrating. So we have to access that differently. But just notice that we can do that by going over here. We're in Clinton County, New York, so you can click this link right here, and their map pops up. You hit OK. You won't do anything weird with their data, whatever we just agreed to. And let's see, it doesn't have the good geocoding. So let's see if it actually pops up. Yeah, great. You're useless. So their maps are kind of terrible, honestly. So we'll just zoom in. I think I remember where to go. Oh God, the cartography just kills me. This is the worst. Where am I? I'm lost now. Is this where I am? Sorry, y'all. I had this dialed yesterday and then I lost it. Okay, right there. All right, so now we have parcels. I guess if you zoom in too far, they disappear. Yeah, don't zoom in too far, they disappear. Sorry, I can't control these maps and I don't love using them. I'd love to integrate this data, but we can't do it just yet. So now we have our Streamwise Atlas open if we want that. Let's just minimize this. We've got our Clinton County parcel map open. So notice the general outline of the parcels. And so we notice that, here's the general outline. So we can kind of go back to the Streamwise outlets with that in mind and use that as a proxy. So we know that their property line ends right about there along the river, goes over to the highway, and then it's the part we're not concerned about in the back end here. So if we're going to do the average buffer width, again, we're just using our measurement tool. We'll go over here. That looks like a decent width. Measure that up. 75 feet. Sweet. Do another measurement over here. Another 70 feet. That's pretty sweet. And do a measurement here. I don't know. I'd say end it right about there, maybe 55. I'm going to go ahead and just give them a 65-foot average buffer width for this property. Canopy cover percent. Again, remember, it's just within that 50 feet. And so if we look at that, let's just do a 50-foot line. Goes to right about there. So then if I'm drawing a line across, actually canopy cover is pretty good. This looks like it might not be actually covered, but I'm going to go ahead and say it's, I don't know, maybe 85% roughly. Parcel size. Remember, you don't have parcels over here, but we do have this information on the Clinton County map. If we click that, we get 1.9 acres. So we can enter that this is larger than 1 acre. So we're striving for a 50-foot buffer width for this property if we're going to give them a Streamwise award. Structures within 50 feet. Well, conveniently, we have a 50-foot measuring. I don't think that's 50 feet, but let's measure from that. Is that a structure? Is that like a parking lot? Tough to tell. But it's 50 feet, 52-ish. I'm going to go ahead and say no on this one. Let's do a quick measurement of the buffer area. So we know that this is actually about, remember that was about 50 feet right there. Their parcel ends right about there. Let's go down to the water's edge. We're looking at 1,200 square meters or 0.3 acres. So we'll enter 0.3 in here, 0.30. Impervious cover within that area. I'm actually not seeing any. This is questionably within it. This is probably pervious development over here, but I'm not seeing any pervious cover, so I'm going to hit 0. Developed pervious cover. I'm actually going to do a measurement right there because I think that this is kind of developed. And if you look at other imagery, probably see that as well. So, but I think that's lawn, so we're going to go 0.04. So it auto calcs at 13%, super conveniently. Is it less than 10%? It is not. So we got some issues there. And this is something you might have to refine in the field, but just giving you an idea. Let's close this measurement. Now we're going to enter some hydrologic soil group information. Let's see, where does that one live? New York hydrologic soil group. So remember, turn on this overall data visibility layer. And it's actually on. Notice how the data is really incomplete. New York, get it together. Their data isn't complete for this area. And in many areas, you zoom out, you see that there's a lot of stuff that's maybe not complete. So we do have some options for this. One, we notice that, go to your legends, you can see that, oh, we have too many legends on, but yeah, zoom down, you can see, or scroll down, you can see the HSGs. This is group A right here. You could also get that by clicking it, and it'll pop up that information. But we can assume that the soils on this site are either group A, or they might not be rated. It might be urban fill. I'm going to go ahead and just say not rated. Again, this is not critical for your award. Scroll down through. Remember, we do have mapped floodplains as a regional data layer. I'm going to turn off all the Vermont data just for cleanliness sake and turn off the New York data for a second. USA flood hazard areas. So it looks like we have a little bit of a floodway, maybe a little bit of 100-year floodplain on that property. So I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to call it 100-year floodplain because chances are good this actually floods. Is it a mapped wetland? Well, this gets a little tricky, but let's turn off this regional national data, go back to New York. Notice we have state regulated freshwater wetlands. Let's turn on this stuff. Turn off your soil groups. So those are on right now, state regulated freshwater wetlands. If we're in the Adirondack Park, we do have a wetlands layer for that. We're not in the park here, but let's zoom out and just make sure that the state regulated freshwater wetlands layer is on. Looks like it is right there. That's actually a regulated wetland. See that? And then the check zone, the buffer. But we don't have that on our property here. So we're going to say no. Is this a polluted or impaired water? Again, go back to your data over here. New York priority water body list, streams. They do divide it up into lakes. So notice that those two layers are on. But we don't have anything for the Saranac River right here. So we're going to say no. And again, you could just use this button to quickly create your map. Use this little pin to attach it as a file or a photo. Do your notes, do your background information, all of that stuff. And when you're done with this, weirdly enough, we can go to the next field assessment stuff, or we can just go back here, hit the X in the top, and save that in your drafts. And so now notice that you have it in your drafts. We've got these records all over the place, but that's the one we just created right there in Plattsburgh. So that was a bit quicker than we ran through Vermont, but a lot of it was very similar. The layers in New York are different, but it's fairly self-explanatory which are which and what will help you. And keep in mind that this is all in the tutorial as well. So before I jump to Quebec, which is very similar except for how you access parcels, does anyone have questions on New York?
Dana, let's stick to questions from those who are in the room so we can get going if need to. Francois is actually downstairs. The only Quebec person right now who will be doing Streamwise, so he's not on, and we can follow up later with specific information.
Quebec specific stuff?
Yep, if that sounds okay. Or
Okay.
we can walk through
No,
it
totally
just
fine.
after everybody has a chance to leave if they need to leave. So
Yeah.
this is a question from Bridget. Would it be possible to have a sub-basin or sub-watershed layer added to the app? The atlas.
I mean, maybe, yeah. What's the goal of that? Because for Streamwise, we only really care, like we're only recording like overall basin. We don't really need to record anything else. So I guess it would just be for your information if you wanted like a smaller Huck boundary.
Yeah, I think
So
that's what we're thinking about. We're thinking about trying to kind of target certain sub-basins or sub-watersheds that we're already focused in with our community engagement and our project work. And so I think it's helpful. It could be helpful for us. It may even be something that might be helpful for other orgs too, as they figure out how to best use their time and their resources when they're doing outreach to specific landowners to engage them in the program.
Yeah, I can see if I can find those as a feature layer and just add it. Hopefully we do it regionally. That'd be nice.
Yeah, that
so
would
we'd
be
have
so cool.
something that looks like the basins, but just smaller. So hopefully we can add those. I don't think it'd be that big a lift, honestly.
Thank you.
So,
Appreciate
yeah.
that. This is super
Yeah.
cool.
Thanks.
So fun.
Thanks. Oh, Lauren, I did want to kind of quickly show people the Survey 123 backend that eventually we're going to have them access.
Great.
But I'm happy to answer questions that people have now too, and then just do that quickly if we're going to skip Quebec, which is fine.
Right. And I just want to reiterate for everyone that right now, until we have login access for you all, once you take a survey out of and send it to the cloud, so have it be out of your outbox, you won't be able to access it.
Right.
So if you need to see your data for any reason until we give you the login information, reach out to Dana or myself. We can log in and find the data for you and make edits. So that's just a delay for this field season that we're going to work to fix.
Yeah, good point.
And we'll go over this in the in-person trainings as well. It'll be a lot easier to physically be together with our phones, see what each other is seeing on the screens.
Yeah.
So, any questions for Dana?
If you think of something, either throw it in the chat or raise your hand or something. I'm going to just quickly show you what the Survey 123 backend will look like. This is kind of similar to what you saw in the branding and communications webinar under reporting and tracking, but I just wanted to go through it real quick. Let's see, where am I going? I'll share my screen in just a second. I gotta get it set up actually, because I am not ready. 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right, screen. Share. Okay, so as Lauren was saying, you don't have access to this yet. We don't need our phone really anymore, so I'm just gonna hide that. This is what the backend looks like for me with my login. Yours will probably look different, but right now we have a backup copy of the app, a couple other things, and then the app itself. And so when you guys do get a login here, you can click that app. You can see, we have 1 record total. It's because I haven't synced my app yet, so it doesn't know that there are drafts that are out there in the world. There's a few different things. I think yours is going to look different because we're going to give you a slightly different user license than what I have. And so really, it's probably going to be like overview and data. So you won't have a lot of this design, collaborate, analyze stuff. What we're interested in right now is the data. For those of you who used Fulcrum last year, this is actually fairly similar. For those of you who didn't, it's actually pretty straightforward. So at the moment, we really only have 1 record in here. And so if I click that, I can actually get a little bit of a preview of what this is. This is just a dummy record that I created some time ago. So you can see there's information. I don't think you can see all the photos. You can see the signature. But if I wanted to do a report or download some data, we do have some options. So notice up here, we do have an export option. And notice too, selected records only. So we could click that and we'd only get the records we select. Why is that important? Well, we also have filters. So we could filter based on property location. We can filter on any question really. And I think for a lot of you, it might be easiest for you to filter on organization. Let's see, what is it? Evaluator organization. So you can just search the question there if you don't know what it's called. Search for evaluator organization is value. And then you can choose which value you'd like to filter on. So I'm going to pick on Michelle again, say Friends of the Winooski. Apply and zoom to, so you can see all your records spatially. You just apply and see which records pop up. And so this one, because I gave it Friends of the Winooski as the evaluator organization, is the only one we have. So now we've filtered the records. Say we had 10 in here, you could select all of those. Click them, you can shift click or control click, just like you would in any spreadsheet. Select a bunch of records. So I'm just going to close this filter over here. And then once you've got some records selected, you can export them. Notice spreadsheets, get a KML, get a shapefile or a file geodatabase. I recommend the file geodatabase. If you're messing around with GIS on your own, you get better information. But you can also get your PDF reports here. And that's right here. So click that report button. Again, choose records to include, selected or all. Right now, they're the same thing. Generally, you're going to want to use selected. We do have a couple templates. They're not amazing. Again, this is year 1, so we haven't really had a chance to edit that template a ton. But I just use the default individual. You do have some output settings down here, report name, and then it'll just give you this object ID. That's just the record ID for the moment. So I would just keep that as the default. It's just the 1 record anyway. It does save it to the Streamwise Maps account. So we do have a copy of it in our ArcGIS online account. And then you do have this critical choice down here, Microsoft Word or portable document format. I think for your reporting, Lauren, you can chime in, but I think you want PDFs. If for some reason you want to download the Microsoft Word, so it's easier for you to maybe copy paste text for your report template, that is an option. But you have to choose one or the other. So you're going to have to ultimately get a PDF, and then you can choose a docx if you want. So we choose that, and then if we want, we can generate that preview sample report. It takes so long. It's so very slow. But that's fine. Eventually it does it, and it does create a PDF report layout. They're not pretty and they're not branded, which is why we have our own Streamwise award reports. And this is just assessment information. This wouldn't have any sort of recommendations, no management practices, no BMPs, no messaging for the landowner. So this is really just something to have for your records. So if we click that, this is what they look like. Not the prettiest thing you've ever seen, but not terrible. So at least you get all your information in there. We may work editing this. There are ways to edit this. So we might be able to make this a little bit prettier, but we're not really giving these out to the public. This is more a record keeping device for us and for NuiPick. So we do have that capability. So again, that's just the report function. You guys don't have access to this just yet. So it's a bit of a moot point, but I did want to show you that as an option. And that is, again, recorded in the branding and communications training. So if you want instructions on how to, mess with that for the future when you are doing your own reporting, it is in that webinar as well. And then obviously it'll be in this one too. So that pretty well concludes the material I wanted to go over today. I'm happy to answer questions if people need to leave. We've covered pretty much most of it other than anyone's questions. So yeah, thanks for listening. And like I said, I'll be happy to answer questions. Are there any in the chat that are new? I haven't been looking. Okay, yeah, PDFs. Lauren says PDFs for reporting, so that's good.
And that's just if something goes wrong. It's the back end a way so we could import all of the data collected if we have to restart from scratch, like we did for this year. So it's good we have all of them from last year.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess that's a good point for anyone returning. We still have all of the Fulcrum data, all of the assessments in that database. But we haven't imported it into Survey 123 yet. So that's something that's on the future task list for the consulting team. So probably something we'll tackle later this year.
We have paid for Fulcrum through August or to August. So it'll have to be done before then. But you can, if you have a login from last year, you can log into Fulcrum until August to see last year's Streamwise assessment data.
Oh, good to know. Thank you.
All right. Well, I have 20 boat launch tours downstairs. If we can wrap it up, if nobody else has questions, we'll make sure
I've
the
got
link.
one more question.
Sure.
Sorry,
That's
Bridget,
okay.
with a jillion questions. Okay, so we're like on the side here, like just cruising the atlas, like looking at some of these different subwatersheds that we want to work in. If we have a question about something that, is it streamwise or is it lakewise? Can we come to you with those kind of like wonderings? Because I think I already have one. So I'll pop you an email, but
sure.
I'm just curious in looking at some of the types of waterways that branch off of bays and things. Are they?
Oh.
Yeah, like how do you? Yeah, anyway.
It's the basic distinction is like lakeshore versus stream river frontage, but I do understand that there's a gray area. So that's a good question. And we are working as a larger collaborative on this same topic, Bridget. And so in the future, we'll probably have a better answer for you, but probably bringing both sets of survey questions to the home site for now, if it in fact does have a lakeshore and stream river frontage would be great. But yeah, definitely count it as a streamwise assessment if you want to use the Basin program funding to do that. But if you have lakewise funding, maybe you also want to do it to count it for your lakewise grant. So
okay. And I see Molly's on the call, and so Molly, we're thinking of it. We're looking at the spot in North Hero, so and we're partnering with Molly, and then we'll circle back and talk with you all. Thank you so much. was great.
Yeah, no worries. I'm glad you were all able to make it. All right. If there are no more questions, we'll probably wrap it up. All right, Lauren, enjoy the rest of your day with the boat launch stewards.
Thank you. Yeah,
All right.
summer. Woohoo.
I know. Yay. All right. Bye, all. Thank you. All right.